Input for planning of a guest lecture on tools for continuous improvement. So here is the integrated system pedagogy, ISP idea, which I would like to use in this presentation for how is this using it as an integrated with an educational action research. So as part of our planning process, we want to use this Plan, Do, Check, Act from Critical Systems Intervention, and as you see, I've linked the colors: plan, the interpretative approach with the interpretivism, yes, and do, yellow, functionalism, check, green, radical structuralism, red, act, radical humanism. And the process, although it's called the Plan, Do, Check, Act process, I would like to start with at the check stage. Also in this diagram I have included this is the Burrell-Morgan matrix, but I added the game model in the center, as this game metaphor is used as a mother metaphor, as a base metaphor for the other metaphors that are surrounded in red around them. So let's start to check radical humanism. We have written a paper TQM Dead or Alive, which is in press. It showed that students showed interest in system thinking. Then we followed up with TQM Governance and Leadership. That was even more successful, and now we want to give a presentation, Tools for Continuous Improvement. And although all this has been successful, I think there's still need for more holism and ways of improving the way we are trying to teach the student system thinking indirectly. Because, as shown in this, I think today's society is a very reductionist society. It's the way the financial system works, the democracy system works. It's very much focused. It's very short term. So there is need for holistic revolution. The bike example is just an illustration of the how it's the famous saying: "Sum of parts equals the whole." Is on the top, but often when you have the parts, it's not always easy to put them together to see what the whole looks like. So it's often necessary to contribute the parts and retain the meaning of the whole. So it's important to have a picture both of the whole and the parts. So then we move on to decision radical humanism. And the idea here is to aid the students in breaking out of their reductionist worldview to enter this. And as we did in our paper, UKSS paper, we used this car video game, Superbug from 1977, to illustrate the idea of how if you have very myopic view of the world, you can't see around the next corner, that's very easy to crash into the guardrails, parked cars, and so on. Are both students and teachers, including us, willing to acknowledge that both teaching and learning tend to follow the banking model of depositing knowledge inside students to be withdrawn during an exam and then forgotten? In other words, are they can we see how this myopic approach makes students into poor drivers in the real world and motivates holistic change? So if we agree on that, then we move on. Although we should perhaps look at some boundary questions. If we define the system as a classroom, who is the client? What's the purpose of the system? What is the measure of success? What is the decision taker? What conditions are controlled by the decision taker? What represents the system, the environment? Who is the designer of the system? What kind of expert is involved? Who will guarantee that the design will be implemented and successful? Who will represent the concerns of those affected? Are the affected able to emancipate themselves from experts. What worldview underlies the design of the system? So if we accept this and move forwards, then we can try this push to inquiry method. So in them is this, which typically starts with this map model, systems map. What do master students in sport leadership need to know about continuous quality improvement? So if we start at the upper left, there are subsystems of knowledge that are interesting. I find interesting how continuous quality improvement relates to ISO 9000 and EFQM. That's one thing. Then we have the PDCA cycle. We have statistical quality control, like statistical process control and Pareto analysis. We have the extension of that in Lean Six Sigma. We have game theory, which I think is very important and perhaps somewhat underrated or underused in areas of quality, continuous quality improvement and also organizational development. Then we have critical total quality management, CQM, and scientific self-management. These were terms that we created in our, or introduced in our paper TQM Dead or Alive. And finally, Buddhism, Holism, and Black Belt Leadership. Those were the ideas we introduced in the next paper about TQM governance and leadership. So, after we have discussed that, then we develop a strategy, and if you just follow the strategy, what we have done to a certain extent perhaps is to identify the nature of the master student course. I think it could be perhaps clarified a little bit more, but I have the slides, I have the unit presentation. So what I hope we can focus on here is point 2, investigate preferences on how continuous quality improvement should be taught. And as we have already started that discussion, I'm already I've developed this prototype, this short presentation for the conference, for the Hull conference, but I want now to extend that into a full CQI lecture, which I will like to test with the course owner, and then we give the lecture, evaluate, and move on. So that was the strategy, and the next step was the planning, and now comes the doing, where of course developing the, as I said, developing the lectures is part of doing. That's something not only thinking, but we're doing. And for functionalism, I think it could be useful to apply the VSM model, as we have discussed previously, to integrate, to discuss among ourselves how this particular lecture, how the integrated systems pedagogy, how the critical systems intervention, how scientific self-management, critical total quality management, all of these things fit together within this model. And at the top we have the CSI book. I don't know if you have gotten any response from Routledge yet, but we introduced the idea to Midgley, which was positive, and we have some ideas on the purpose of what we're doing and want to formulate that in the book. When it comes to the vision, I like this Evans research triangle very much. So I think we use that in the paper, and I think it's a very useful way of thinking about how we are developing, trying to unite both teaching teaching, researching, and doing practical work. Then system 3, digital meetings and email exchange. That is how we control progress, make sure you're making progress. System 2, coordinate matrix. I'll show that on that's the Kanban system that I will show that we have been using for some time. I'll show the latest status on the next slide. And then we have the actual work, system 1, teaching and writing, lectures and papers. We have now the integrated systems pedagogy paper was recently presented successfully, very successfully, at the UKSS conference. It has been accepted for inclusion in the Systemist. Although we have to make just a few minor updates because of the dates of some of the references are not. We're not yes. Then so that is one process A, and then the process B or system process B within system 1, the lecture, the continuous quality improvement lecture, and associated paper, which is what we are discussing right here. And we have system C, the Hull conference, where we plan to present this associated paper, which I'm just labeled here the new CSI paper. And then we have other processes. So here is the coordination matrix of the Kanban system. At the backlog, we have been talking about writing a CST overview paper. Not started doing that yet, and when we spoke with Midgley, he mentioned that he has already written a book chapter on that, and which we have already referred to in our papers, but we were thinking about a different kind of overview paper. And then of course we have the CSI book, which is very important. Now, and then we have the doing, what we are doing right now. You are of course working on your project, PhD project. I have the psychocybernetics paper that was about to submit, almost update but had to skip that because of the UKSS conference. I'm writing a book on internal control. I have an AIM paper that is different from the SPA paper, but it is ready to be submitted to the Systemist. But so it's a paper I want to submit after the next two that are in line. I'm also writing a game philosophy paper, and then we have in boldface here the lecture, which is the theme of this presentation. We have the TQM fact fiction paper, which is not yet, it was intended for Kubernetes. If it turns out to be, if it's not accepted or the challenge is there, of course we can submit it. Or it goes too slowly, we may consider submitting it to Systemist instead, but it's not so important. And then we have the Hull conference paper, which we have a first draft. And then we have the waiting. We are waiting for the ISP paper to be published in Systemist. I'm writing a book called Networks of Meaning. That is waiting in the sense that I have to complete the game philosophy paper before I can return to it. I have the SPA paper in review. I believe you submitted the set scores paper after you did the final revisions. We have the CSI VOSC paper, or the chapter in the VOSC book. We are waiting for them. That has been just waiting for the publication of that book. We have the TQM Dead or Alive paper, which has been accepted, so we are just waiting for the publication. Yeah, and similarly, ISS's paper, which we were told were going to be published on the proceedings. And they also informed that they wanted this to be submitted to the ISS yearbook. Haven't got any feedback on that yet, but we are waiting. What has been done since the last meeting is that the information system, the integrated systems pedagogy paper was presented with success at the UK SS conference. Okay, so check radical structuralism after all this has been done, although there was both written, so a little bit of history here, although there is both the written and oral indication of improved systemic understanding of TQM after lectures in 2023, only 1 out of 30 students, 3%, decided to use TQM as a topic for the final essay. In 2024, however, after we had improved ISP further, 3 out of 12 students, 25%, wrote about TQM. So, will there be opportunities to write about TQM, CQI, and or related topics that make us understand the students have been developing as system thinkers in 2025? This is a question, and that is, of course, highly relevant for us if you want to continue to apply and continue research on our integrated systems pedagogy approach. And if we do so, I think there's, which I hope we can do, and I would like to do, then I notice there is evidence in this evidence of integrated systems pedagogy from the leader biography in the unit handbook. Just to mention a few things, there is a reference to Stavl and Welch right on the picture there, which to me is a very, very important, which was also the key reference in the basis in our ISP presentation. And then that talks about organizational systems, systems inquiry, and critical systems intervention, and also talk about specific mention about the UK Systems Society. So here, decision is needed. Have we needed a decision today, right now? Should we write, or after I go on this presentation, should we write a new ISP paper that accounts for the new theoretical and practical insights? If so, could we focus on thoughts on leadership in teaching? If so, where should we publish? For instance, we have already prepared a paper for presentation at Hull, but we could also, perhaps we could present another paper there. We could do one paper by Ogland and Evans, another paper by Evans and Ogland, and that would be about the ISP approach. So one about CSI and one about ISP. So references. Thank you.